Thank you. And good evening, and thank you for acknowledging the 80-year anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz today. It's incredible. We have a historic Jewish community in the state of South Carolina, and Charleston, actually, one of the very first synagogues ever built in the country was built right here in South Carolina. And tonight I have with me Jamie Fenn. She's my political director. She's my women's coalition director. She's my Jewish director. And we recently, obviously, we had Christmas, and this was the first time in a long time that the first day of Christmas fell on the first day of Hanukkah. And I got you the Star of David necklace, so she's wearing it tonight. But thank you, Jamie, for everything you do for the Jewish community. And for every South Carolinian. Thanks for being here with us tonight. So thank you. She's amazing. I shouldn't be here tonight. According to, every story in history, someone like me should not be successful in life at all. And ever since I first ran for office, I puzzled everyone from the Washington media, the establishment, my Washington colleagues, and they ask, whose side is Nancy Mace on? Truly. And many in Washington could never dream outside this dichotomy, this fake dichotomy of left versus right. But as often is the case, the simplest explanation is always the answer. I owe nothing to anyone in Washington. I don't work for the Washington elite. I don't care that I don't get invited to the cocktail parties, because I work for you, the people, and nobody else. And I will tell you, it's a very lonely job. If you want a friend in Washington, you should just get a dog. So I did about 2 years into this very lonely job. I got a beautiful little 7-pound Havanese. Her name is Liberty. She loves freedom. She loves the Constitution. And she loves bacon. So if you see her, I hope that you'll have some bacon for her. But in a time when our nation feels so divided, there's a reason for it. There's such polarization out there. But politics shouldn't define who we are. It's our faith that defines who we are. And we need more leaders who believe in our faith, because God transcends all of politics. And I didn't used to be this religious, but as I've gotten older, as I found my faith in Jesus Christ, our Father, our Savior, our friend, I have finally, I think, sort of figured it out, because God is eager to give second chances to people, everybody, including people like me. I dropped out of high school at the age of 17, and he's eager to offer second chances to those who seek his forgiveness. That is Joel 2:13. And as many times as I've fallen, I've tripped a lot. I've got Allison Dean Love on the first row. She's on the board of visitors at the Citadel. I didn't know you were going to be here tonight, Allison. Surprise. Allison has known me since I was 18, and she has seen me trip and fall spectacularly over the years. But she's also seen me grow as a human being, grow as a woman in faith, and grow and be successful in a way that I never even ever thought possible. And as many times as I've fallen, my family never gave up on me. I never gave up on me. But more importantly, God never gave up on me. And I think those who've been through the worst have the biggest message to share with people who have found him. And the more that you believe in him, the more that he does for you. And so growing up, I stumbled a little bit. And if you were scared of my dad's bark, my dad was a retired Army general. And he commanded the 1st Ranger Training Brigade at Fort Benning, Georgia. And if you were afraid of his bark, my mom was a retired school teacher. You were definitely afraid of mom's bite. So when I dropped out of high school at the age of 17, I learned that dropping out of high school might not have been the best idea. And my parents said to me, if you're going to stop going to school, you got to start going to work. So I took a job at the Waffle House, exit 203 on College Park Road in Ladson, when you're coming into Charleston and want to go to the beach. And Denny's was a little too highbrow. So it was Waffle House, but Waffle House taught me the value of hard work. And it also taught me, I said, well, maybe I want to go back and get my high school diploma. I didn't want to be a Waffle House waitress for the rest of my life. However, if the Border Patrol would hire Waffle House waitresses and send them down to the border, there would be nobody invading the southern border, because those women are taking people out at 2 a.m., right, every single night. Who's been to the Waffle House? Okay, keep your hand up if you've been to the Waffle House after midnight. Okay, those of you are my people. We're going to send you the border to protect the border too, because y'all are pretty hardcore. So I went from, I didn't do the Waffle House thing for very long. I got my high school diploma. I went from making waffles to then making history, where I met Allison Dean Love, and became the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, 25 years ago. And that is a college where we don't burn the American flag, we salute it. And I learned a lot in that time. I learned what it was like to be a member of Congress in a polarizing time. I had death threats, all the death threats I had. I got yelled at a lot, I was harassed a lot, and oh my God, people wanted to kill me. And I didn't know it at the time, but this was a training ground to prove to myself that I could have the courage and have the bravery to stand up for what is right and to fight for what is right. Because today, now more than ever, we need people in Congress, we need people in governor's seats, we need people in state legislatures who are willing to fight for the people. Because the time of the establishment, the time of just going along to get along, the time of just placating is over. Have you looked at the cost of eggs at the grocery store? I can't even, and I tell my kids, I come home, I'm home on the weekends because I'm in DC most weeks, and I'm like, we're filling up the gas tank. We have some of the cheapest gas in the Southeast, but it's still expensive. But I go to the grocery store and I tell my kids, they're 18 now and 15, and I'm like, we're doing the outside aisle. You don't get to go in the middle and get the stuff in the box. You get meat, you get fruit, you get vegetables. And I will tell you, we'll spend $300 with one small trip to Trader Joe's for a $5.99 bottle of wine. The Lambrusco, the bubbly red wine, is $5.99. It's very good. But that cheap wine, just one bottle, but we'll spend $300. And I'm like, where did the money go? Like, I can feed you for a weekend. Who can actually afford that? We can't. And we live in a state right now where, God bless them, we went from 6.2% state income tax, 6.2, to 6, 0.2%. Now, I was in the state legislature from 2018 to 2021. We were talking about taking the state income tax down to like 5% years ago. We're not even there yet. And then we got immigration in the state. I just single-handedly took out a sanctuary sheriff in South Carolina in November. If you don't think the cartels are here, let me give you a little bit of honesty. They are here. And there are certain neighborhoods and streets in the state of South Carolina where the Sinaloa cartel hangs out and controls those neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods and streets in South Carolina where the MS-13 gang controls. I went into a cash-only restaurant in North Charleston a couple months ago. I saw 13 tattooed on a guy's neck. I got the hell out. I was like, as soon as he finds out who I am, I'm out. Like, we're getting out of here. But they're here, and we are not doing anything about it. When I took out a sanctuary sheriff in Charleston County last fall, I got documents in August from a whistleblower learning that this sheriff was letting illegals out onto the streets of South Carolina, illegals who were rapists, illegals who were pedophiles, and illegals who were murderers. And the state did nothing about it. So then I went public with the document that I had and other documents. I got a second whistleblower. I got more information. I then gave a speech on the floor of the House. It was a little incendiary, but I didn't really care. I then entered documents into the record in the Oversight Committee, because that's where I have some jurisdiction over illegal immigration and what's happening. And I entered that evidence into the record and had this very public debate. And people were like, why is Nancy Mace running for sheriff when she's running for Congress? I was basically running against the sheriff because nobody else would. Nobody else would bring up what was going on the streets of South Carolina. Nobody else would stand up for women and kids being raped by illegals in the state of South Carolina. But I did, because it was the right thing to do. I learned at the Citadel that you do the right thing no matter what, no matter the consequence. And so that's what I did. I am so passionate about the state. I grew up in South Carolina. I'm from Goose Creek. I tell people you can take the girl out of Goose Creek, but you can't take Goose Creek out of the girl. It's not going to happen. And then you look at a lot of members of Congress right now, we're dealing with the energy crisis. What people don't know is that within the next 5 years, with the amount of growth that we're having, our state is the 10th fastest growing state in the country. Everyone from California and New York and Massachusetts are moving here. It's not just to Charleston, they're moving to Columbia, they're moving to Myrtle Beach, they're moving to Greenville. Greenville is now a suburb of Atlanta, which is great, bring your money here. But we've got roads issues, we've got energy issues, and now we have energy companies passing on the cost of commercial energy onto residents. And we're seeing the cost of residential energy skyrocket. They think they're gonna get away with it, but they can't. And we had the state waste $9 billion on a nuclear project years ago, VC Summer. $9 billion of your tax dollars went down the drain and they couldn't build a nuclear facility. And we have a state who's thinking about reinvigorating the project. Okay, that's fine. How are you going to do it without wasting tax dollars this time? And then we have all these data centers that are moving to South Carolina, and we're not talking about smaller nuclear energy, SMRs, or so they call it, that can then grow with the projects. And so with those different facilities and manufacturing and what's going on, because in the next 5 years, if we don't address the energy crisis, we are going to have rolling blackouts just like Texas did. And then you talk about the critical infrastructure. We are so weakened because we don't have the capabilities, the resources, the money, because we've wasted it on DEI. We've wasted on trannies everywhere, and I don't care if you're offended by that. They should not be in women's restrooms. But we've wasted so much money on this woke ideology in the federal government, and some of it's here in the state government. It trickles down. You get a federal dollar, you're doing the woke stuff, it's in our elementary schools. We've wasted so much money. We have lost sight of some of our institutions. China is on our heels. I would not be surprised if we learned these drones are Chinese. No one should be surprised, and we shouldn't be surprised that our government probably lied about it. They lied to us in Congress, they lied to you. I absolutely believe that. We have to get liquid natural gas, and to do that we need pipelines, and to do that we gotta source it from the Permian Shale or have it shipped in from somewhere. So the energy crisis, and then women and kids. I have learned so much being the mother of teenage kids. If we don't read the school newsletter and see some of the stuff that's in it, that the books they're putting in the library, I told my kids, and this was in middle school, so I've got one that's about to graduate, my second one's about to graduate early. And I told them, this is like in middle school, so this is like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And the pronoun thing had just sort of started, and I was like, if you come home with pronouns rather than A's and B's, you can go live with dad. We split it about 50-50. I was like, you do not come home with pronouns. I don't care about pronouns. I care about you graduating from high school and getting a degree that you can then use in your job or go on and do a 4-year education. But we are so backwards. I got an email 2 weeks ago, and I forwarded it to my staff. It was in Dorchester County. A kid was in high school, he was a freshman in high school, he was so nervous. His teacher had this quiz for the students, and it was asking about gender ideology. What were their preferred pronouns? What gender were you? Like, you get to pick your gender on a menu. Well, if you're in Kamala's California, there's like 99 genders or something in San Francisco, but whatever. But this kid had written his dad. His dad copied me on a text to the principal of the high school in Dorchester County. And the kid was really worried he was going to offend his teacher because he said there's only 2 genders. Like, you're either born a man or you're born a woman. That's it. There's nothing else. And the teacher had a rainbow flag and all this stuff in there. And I replied back very simply, I too would like to know what the hell is going on in Dorchester County. It got resolved within 24 hours. So sometimes it just takes a strong leader to push back and say, what is going on? And when you strike the fear of God in people, they then fess up and they correct the issue. So protecting women and kids, and as a rape survivor, I was raped at the age of 17, is also on my mind. I've been a victim of the system. I know what the system is like, and I know why it's so important that we have a governor, a lieutenant governor, an attorney general who will actually prosecute child trafficking. It's not happening right now. That we actually have people in our government and the state level who will prosecute sex trafficking. I'm telling you right now, they're not doing it. That will actually have leadership that prosecute rape. And I'm telling you right now, they are not doing it. And so it's important that we have people who aren't afraid, that are going to protect women and girls. And I'm working with the state legislature now. I've got a lot of bills at the federal level to protect women and kids, not just in sports, but in bathrooms and everywhere, but also at the state level. Because I recently learned, going through some trauma that I had last year, that the state treats women in rape victims and all these issues. We have to fix it. So I have built a coalition of state lawmakers who are working with me to further protect women and girls. And I got to tell you, when I first heard about the book situation in libraries, I was like, that's nonsense. There's no way. Oh my God, if you read some of these books, not just in the school library and the public library that your underage kids can have access to, like I didn't believe it at first. I thought, okay, this is just a ploy, whatever. You see some of this stuff, it is here. It is in the state of South Carolina, and we need to eradicate it. It needs to get out, be gone, go, bye. The other thing too is the education crisis. I mean, we've got to have, we are keeping kids in poverty, the poorest, the darkest neighborhoods, we are keeping them in poverty because we don't have educational choice in the state. We don't have school choice to lift people out of poverty. And when they're lifted out of poverty, they get better jobs. And we all know that if you can't read or write by third grade, you won't be ready by middle school. If you're not ready by middle school, you won't be ready by high school. And as a high school dropout, I know firsthand what it's like to just be a statistic, just to be a number. I fought my way out of Berkeley County. I should not be here today because of all the fighting I had to do. But imagine someone who didn't have the courage, the bravery, the fight in them, to be told no every single time. When you try to go out there and be successful and do something, to be told no by institutions, by education, every single day. Those kids are not going to make it. So we have to have school choice in this country as well. So as I ruminate and as I think about what's next, I want to make sure that we have strong leaders who will produce results for the state of South Carolina. Because in this Trump era, we have to have leaders who will implement his agenda. And who's grateful to have Trump in office right now? Can we give an applause for him? Literally, the guy did more in 4 days than the Biden-Harris administration did in 4 years. He's literally red-pilling liberals and elitists in the establishment legacy media every single day. And I would encourage all of you to read every single executive order. He is doing everything he said and he promised to do. Now, there will be lawsuits in courts to try to fight him and all of that. But when you look at what he's doing, especially what he's done for women, this is a guy, this is like the legacy media lied to us. They said, oh, Republicans hate women, Donald Trump hates women. He just hired the first female chief of staff in the White House ever in U.S. history. It was Donald Trump who did that. And it's the left who is trying to set women back 100 years. It is the left who just elected a tranny out of Delaware. There's literally only been one woman ever elected to Congress out of the state of Delaware. She's now a U.S. Senator. And this guy, because he puts on a skirt, all of a sudden he gets the title as second. He's not. And that guy made a living out of politics, Tim McBride, on putting his penis in women's bathrooms. So I said no more. The left literally lost it. It's crazy. I literally got assaulted because I don't want men in women's bathrooms. And I look at, we just did something that, where's Sydney, my comms person? She just posted a picture, I couldn't remember, you couldn't believe you found it, of me senior year at the Citadel, chopped a little haircut. And we posted something about, if that were a man in a miniskirt 25 years ago, under this ideology, gender ideology we have today, a man in a miniskirt could take away Title IX from women, could take away scholarships from women, could take away the title of first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. I don't think so. Not happening on my watch. And so I refuse to be lectured by people who think that there are more than two genders in this country. It's not science. We got to remind them it's not biology, it's not science. And so as I explore the future and what it looks like, we're going to need all the help we can get. And I would love to hear from you on your thoughts, what you think is important to South Carolina, and how we can fix it. I had meetings today with members of the state legislature and understanding what they are working on, because I think it's really important that we have leadership who understands the legislature and how the governor operates, but that we also have people who are willing to fight the fight that's ahead. It's a fight for the future of the party. It's a fight for the future of the state of South Carolina. It is the fight for the future of our country. And which way are we deciding to go? I want a future that's strong. I want a future of fighters. I want a future where our enemies fear us. So we're not fighting these wars all over the world. And if you decide that you're going to spy on us, China, Iran, Russia, you don't get a single dime from us. We literally sent $1.1 million to Russia to study Russian cats on treadmills. I can't even, we've paid China millions and millions of dollars in studies so we could try to buy puppy parts at wet markets in China. We allowed a Chinese balloon to fly all over from the west coast of this country to the east coast until we shot it down off the coast of South Carolina. We allowed that spy balloon to go all over nuclear sites, military sites, states, secret sites, so they could spy on us until we shot it down off the coast of our state. So we need powerful leaders who will implement Trump's agenda, who will implement the people's voice, and someone who's not going to report to the elitists, to that class, but who will only report to the people, which is what I've always done from the beginning. And I love serving. I love what I'm doing today. And I want to bring that back to South Carolina, because you know why? The world is watching America. And we need to get up on our feet as quickly as we can, the same way that Donald Trump did in Butler Township, Pennsylvania. He threw his fists in the air and he said, we are going to be resilient. We are going to have the courage. We are going to be united, and we are going to stand up and meet the challenges of this moment. And that's all I'm here to do. Thank you all. We'll take some questions, and God bless. And then how are we doing? You want to do questions? We do Q&A for a little bit?
Okay.
It's an AMA. You literally can ask me anything. Nothing's off limits. Whatever you want.
Tracy Robbins. I live in Richland County. I actually ran for the State House for this seat. And so I tell you that because I knocked on over 12,000 doors. And the biggest number one thing is education, our schools. And I love the school choice thing. I taught school in Beaufort, South Carolina for 20 years.
God bless you. God
with
bless
a
you for
passion.
that.
I left the profession because of what our school system has turned into. And so school choice, where I do like that idea, and many, middle class, upper class families like that and have that ability to send their children to other schools. I think about the parents that were in where I taught at Well Branch, that took public transportation to work on Hilton Head, that don't have a clue about school choice or don't have the means to send them across on the other side of town to Beaufort. So if you become governor, would you commit? Because I know if you're not in the system, you really don't understand it. Just like I don't understand what's wrong with SCDOT because I don't work there. But if you ask me, if you ask people like Gary Dennis, who's on the school board, my brother, who's a teacher, we can tell you what the problems are. We can tell you the simple solutions to get our kids on track. Would you commit to getting a group of people together, like school board members, educators, and we can actually fix our schools?
100%, 100%. I'm a number in the system. I dropped out of high school at 17. I was raped at 16. I didn't go back to school. And I was a number in the system. And embarrassingly, my mom was a teacher at my high school. And in fact, anyone heard of Charlemagne the God?
Yes.
Okay. I think he got red pilled the other day. What did he say? He said something about Fauci. He said that if Fauci wasn't guilty, why did they pardon him? Yeah. He's a good friend of mine, but we dropped out of the same high school the same year. Both of our mothers were teachers. He and I should have never made it out of Berkeley County the way that we did. But understanding that I was just a number in the system, and school choice won't fix everything. Ideally, school choice would work best for those who have the least, the poorest in our communities. But that's not, like you said, there are some families that are working 2 or 3 jobs, that sort of thing. But we have to, the way that I see it, the way that we lift people out of poverty is to lift them out of education. So I support 4-year-old pre-K as well. But also we have to increase our teacher pay, the bureaucracy in this state. We've been talking about this for decades and never got it done. I would let a lot of people go within the Department of Education of the state to make sure that we can pay our teachers. We're doing it by proviso every year in the state budget. A proviso in the state budget is a temporary I call it a temporary law for 1 year until the next year's budget. But we're doing teacher salaries by proviso every year right now. Teachers ought to know they're going to make $50K a year, starting salary no matter what. It shouldn't just be done in the proviso. It should be permanent and then some. We don't allow people that have PhDs and are qualified to teach. We don't have that reciprocity in South Carolina with teacher certification. And I was a part of the state legislature years ago when we were working on this, and we upped the salary, I think back then, to like 45 grand. I believe they're at 50 grand now. But there are a lot of different things we can do to help the system until then that we're not doing right now. That would be very meaningful and helpful. So I would be open to listening to any and all ideas. My problem is, we have these studies, and then you have this research, and then nothing ever gets done. We haven't had conservative leadership in our state in decades.
Call me.
Yeah.
I'll give you some.
Yep, I'm happy. I'm open to any and all ideas. But my biggest thing is we have to get things done. I'm done talking. I want action. My kids go to public school. I've seen the pros and cons of it, of where we're. We've talked about vocational training for years. Yeah. We're still not doing it. I can tell you, who's had a plumber lately? Come over. Yeah. I'm paying like $500 every time the plumber comes over. Yep. My plumber vacations in Cape Cod every summer. I'm not vacationing in Cape Cod every summer, but he is. And so he's got apprentices, but like that, like the welders, if you're a welder coming out of high school at 18, no college education, you're making $80K a year out the door. You have a nuclear welding certificate, you're making $110,000, $115,000 starting salary. You don't need a 4-year degree. And we talk about, we're going to build this beautiful brick building in this county or that for vocational training. I don't care about your building. What I care about is educating kids, giving them the tools to be successful, because I'm tired of importing jobs from out of the country or out of state. With all this growth, I want our people to get those jobs. Why are we importing jobs from other states and other countries when we have people right here, if they were trained, to do those jobs? Yes, sir. You're eagerly in the back. You're next.
Well, new seedling. I'm from Lexington, and from Linwood Boulevard around the corner.
Wonderful.
We appreciate you coming up here. There are more Republicans elected to office now than ever.
Right.
We're still a purple damn state.
Right.
If you even think about running for governor, get behind closed primaries, please.
Yes.
That is huge.
I have supported closed primaries. There was legislation or something we did when I was in the State House between 2018 and 2021 about closed primaries. I represent a purple district. When I won my seat in 2020, I won by 1.5 points or 5,000 votes. So I know very well what it's like in primaries. And we saw in the presidential primary, we saw Democrats cross over to vote in a Republican presidential primary. Yes. The only reason they did that was to hurt Donald Trump. Yep. So, I support closed primaries. We don't even register people to vote by party either. And I represent a district that, based on my polling, 40% are independent. They're not affiliated. I have 32% Republican, 28% Democrat. But I tell you, it's less about party, it's more about issues. Suburban women are with us when we talk about the right issues. Protecting women and girls who are raped, victims of incest, keeping men out of women's sports, men out of women's locker rooms, men out of women's bathrooms. Those things are winning issues. But I'll tell you, as a Republican, when I was doing the bathroom thing in December and November, there were Republicans who were afraid to touch it. I couldn't get a vote on it in the House because Republicans were afraid to touch it. What they don't understand, these are winning issues with female voters. So I am very well versed in that. But yeah, I've always supported closed primaries. Yes, sir. Evan?
Yes.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Okay, so Dr. Simmer's just been appointed by Governor McMaster, and
I don't know Dr. Simmer. I don't know.
You don't like Dr. Simmer?
I don't know who that is.
He's the mask guy who looks really funny. He wore the mask up until, I think, last year.
I'm anti-mask. Okay.
Yeah. If you don't know who he is, you need to learn what he's all about, because the vaccinations that he actually wanted every South Carolinian to get vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine, and luckily a lot of us resisted. I know you took the vaccine, but now you're...
And I regret it.
Regretting it.
Yep.
And school choice, what it could do is it could put parents in predicaments where they have to give in to the state edicts on what that director of public health, which Dr. Silver's going to be.
Well, they would already have that now. If your kid's in public school, you're gonna be directed by the director of public health. They would already have that
Yeah.
now, whether it's school choice or not. Now, I will tell you on the vaccination, we should not be mandating that. And thank God, Trump actually just did an executive order to allow troops that didn't want to take the vaccine back into the military. So thank God he did that. And, I took the vaccine. I thought I was doing what was right, especially for older people in my community. Well, it turns out it wasn't the first shot that did me in. It was the second shot. The second Moderna shot, I now have asthma, I have chest pains, and I have tremors in my right hand. I'm doing I'm doing some of the vitamins that he recommends to try to see if I can reverse some of what's happened. But my health has never been, I can't do cardio exercise anymore because of the vaccination. So I regret it. Thank God I didn't vaccinate my kids. Thank God.
Well, Congressman Timmons, he's also had side effects from taking the vaccine. What are we going to do to remedy this situation? Because Governor McMaster and Ed Simmer and his whole cabinet try to force these vaccines on us. There was never a mandate, but we went through psychological warfare to try.
And the state shut down. Businesses were forced to shut down as well. Yeah, so if I were governor, I would never mandate another vaccination like that ever on the people of South Carolina, ever. It will not happen. It'll never happen. I think that I especially learned, I've always been someone that I never vaccinated all of my kids all the time, because when you have newborns, there are so many vaccinations they want to do at 2 months. And one of my children, at about 18 months, one of my kids was presenting with autism. So one of my children was spinning and flapping their hands and walking on their tippy toes. And at that point, I realized, I was like, we're gonna only do the minimum vaccinations. We're gonna do 1 or 2 at a time. We'll do them every couple months. We'll eventually get to the legally mandated requirement. I had another kid that had a vaccine reaction. I think it was to polio, and that child had a central nervous system reaction where they were blinking about 100 times a minute. And they did this starting 2 weeks after the vaccination. They did it for about a month. I was freaking out. Both of my children today have what's called sensory processing disorder. Not every kid that's on the spectrum has sensory processing disorder, but not every kid that has sensory processing disorder is on the spectrum. And so I know firsthand what our food does. Like, I support RFK Jr., what he's doing. When one of my children was presenting as autistic at 18 months, I changed my diet entirely. 21 to 31 days later, that kid was doing things that they had never done before. And they were back to normal. They still have sensory processing issues, but they're no longer on the spectrum. So I've seen, like, firsthand vaccinations, my fear of vaccinations, and also the dyes in our food, the chemicals in our food, we're literally harming ourselves.
We need a state moratorium on the COVID-19 vaccine. Parents are still vaccinating their kids. A lot of the parents with adopted kids, they're vaccinating these kids with it. It's horrible.
It's horrible.
What we're doing to children in South Carolina. I understand people want to fix education, but these vaccines are.
No, and I'm with you on that. And I have seen that firsthand in my life, and I've learned a tremendous amount. But that also, not just the vaccines, but it's the food we're putting in our bodies. And it is, and I tell you, you got to go read the labels. I do a lot of Trader Joe's shopping, because Trader Joe's, if you are buying something packaged, they have a lot fewer ingredients. You can actually read the ingredients and know what they are, but the chemicals we're putting in our foods, we're literally killing ourselves, making ourselves fatter, we're giving ourselves cancer. And I 100% wholeheartedly, and I hope both of our senators will support RFK Jr. this week. I believe on the 29th is when his hearing is. Of this week, and we'll support him, because we got to make our country healthier again through all of that you just said. But I've learned it firsthand. I've seen it, witnessed it, and have been sharing that testimony ever since it happened. So, yes, ma'am.
On the federal, my name's Anna. On the federal level, are you in support of the audit the Fed bill? And
Yes, I believe I'm a co-sponsor of the audit the Fed bill. Thomas Massey just called me the other day to make sure that I was. So. We absolutely should. And you look at the Fed, Congress has no control over the Federal Reserve. If we did, we wouldn't print over $4 trillion a year. It doesn't matter who's president. The Federal Reserve will do whatever the Federal Reserve wants to do. So they have been printing over $4 trillion a year, putting that fiat money into the market, and it's hurt inflation. So inflation is caused by a lot of things. Printing money is one of them, but also all the government spending that we've had. I have a bill that I do with Rand Paul every Congress that would balance the budget in 5 years. Pre-COVID dollars and the pre-COVID spending, you could balance the budget in 5 years by only cutting 1 penny. And post-COVID dollars, and I will tell you, it's not just Democrats that have caused inflation, Republicans too. Because it's been Republicans pushing post-COVID spending, and they're not willing to make the cuts. They say they are now, but where are you going to make that $2 trillion cut, and how long are you going to have to do it? But Republicans have been just as guilty about spending as Democrats have. So in post-COVID dollars, the penny plan would cost 5.5 pennies. It's a lot of money when you think about the amount of money that you have to cut in mandatory spending to make that happen. You can do it, but 5.5 cents, if we continue to spend drunkenly, like Democrats do, if Republicans do, it's going to take years. And I would love to balance the budget in 5 years. It's not realistic. I would take 10 years at this point, 20 years at this point, because of the rate that we're spending money. And in fact, when the hurricanes happened, the White House denied that FEMA was spending money to house illegal aliens. You remember that denial by Jean-Karine Pierre, whatever her name is, KJP? Did I say that right? But I have a bill. I also couldn't get Republicans to vote on it last year. But I had a bill to take whatever was left over of FEMA funds that were used to house illegal aliens to pay for hurricane response by FEMA. There were Republicans, both in the December 2023 vote on the budget, on this FEMA vote, but there were Republicans 3 times. Republicans joined Democrats to vote to send now $1.45 billion, capital B, billion dollars to FEMA to be used to house illegal aliens. Republicans did that. I didn't. But we're just as guilty of the reckless spending as they are. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, so my name's Dylan. I do some work for Turning Point USA in the state. And basically my question was, I kind of talked to a few members of the Freedom Caucus of the state legislature, and they tell me that here in the state of South Carolina, with the legislature, there's a lot of the same issues as in Washington, D.C. We have a lot of politicians who are just there to serve themselves and their own political and personal gains, and not the will of the constituents in South Carolina. So as governor, how would you get a legislature, which is vast majority made up of career politicians, to fall in line with a more conservative platform?
You have to strike the fear of God of people. That's the only way to do it. With a weak governor's seat, you have to strike the fear of God and people. And I have learned that, unfortunately, that's the way that you have to operate. You have to wake up every day and decide, I'm going to choose figurative violence. We're going to do that because that's the only way sometimes to put somebody in a corner and make them make the decision, because otherwise they're going to make the easy decision. The easy decision is what we have always done. But that's not going to work anymore for the people because they're tired of it. And the people have been red-pilled for years now about the truth. And you can't get the truth from the legacy media. You're now getting it from Turning Point USA. You're now getting it from Charlie Kirk. You're getting it from Benny Johnson. You're getting it from all these folks that are willing to tell you the truth, even when it makes you feel uncomfortable. And so what I have learned is that you have to put people on hard spots sometimes. I go and do the tough interviews. I did the interview with George Stephanopoulos with Donald Trump. Donald Trump won a $15 million defamation suit. Do you know how hard it was as a rape survivor to go on and be picked on like that by George Stephanopoulos with my 14-year-old kid in the studio watching? I had such a hard conversation with my kid after that because she didn't know that's what I was there for. I didn't know that's what I was there for. But I stood up for Donald Trump as a rape survivor, knowing the lies they were putting out against Donald Trump. That's the kind of leadership it's going to take. When we had the speaker's vote just a few weeks ago, we were down to 2 people, one of them from South Carolina, down to 2 people who were holding up the speaker's vote. You know how much courage it takes to call the President of the United States, put him on the cell phone with the speaker, and the 2 holdouts, and start doing that deal. And the threats that I had to make in some cases, in some of those conversations, I was getting yelled at too. But I don't get my feelings hurt, and I don't care. Because it's the right thing to do. But we have to have someone who's going to be strong, who understands the legislature, understands how to play the game that they're playing. Look what they're doing with judges. They're putting their family members into judge seats. They are patting each other on the back. They're making money off some of their, how can you make a living making $10,000 a year as a state legislature? Only rich people can do this job. That's what the state legislature makes. They make $10,000 a year. So normal, average South Carolinians can't do that job. And so we wonder why the system is so, we make the system corrupt. And so because you don't make a lot of money, if you don't have a lot of money, you go into that job, you're gonna find every single way you can to make money behind the voters that elected you. And so we need honesty, we need truth, and so I love what Turning Point is doing, and all these groups are doing. I've been red-pilled a ton. Like, I took the vaccine, I thought it was the right thing to do, it was what everyone said was bad idea. I'm suffering the physical consequences of that decision. So, like, I've been red-pilled just as much as everybody else. So it's important that we tell the truth, but also, I've been in the state legislature. I have relationships in the federal government with Congress and with the administration. And don't believe the news that you read in the press always. Like, I have great relationships, but I also know how to fight. I also know how to use that fight to get what I need. And I was, we just had the House Rules package. There were only 12 bills that were considered in the House Rules package in the 119th Congress. I had one of those 12 bills. You know how I did it? Because I fought to get there. So you've got to have that spirit, that fight, that knowledge, that inside track to be able to make it happen. And it's not easy because, you know, corruption happens everywhere, but you have to have somebody who's willing to say no and say, you're not getting what you want, state legislature, until the people get what they want. And that's the kind of leadership that we have to have, both in Washington and in Columbia.
Only a few more.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Good to see you. Did you travel all the way up here?
I would happen to be in town.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, I don't drive up. Hey, I definitely agree with you on RFK. I'd like to see him, get into that position. I do gotta disagree very strongly with him on the fluoride situation.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a water chemist now for 40 years. Community fluoridation started 80 years ago, so it's had an anniversary this month. I think and I'm not sure where he's getting his information, but a lot of the studies that are being cited, a lot of the problems with fluoride are things that we're not doing in the U.S. That are causing problems elsewhere. It's almost like these studies, they're plotting, they're drawing the curves, and then they're plotting the points, finding the points to
That happens in science too.
And I
Yeah.
think that's going to be something that is going to be probably decided on a state level from what I'm seeing out there now already. But I do think we could make a mistake.
I would love for you to send that to us, to our,
I'd love to send
we would love to take a look at that too and educate us. I'm not a chemist. I failed biology in high school. I got a B in physics because of relativity. It almost killed me. But we have really smart people. We would love to take a look at it.
Can't make Waffle House eggs.
Okay, well, I can make Waffle House eggs, and I can smother, cover, and chunk. Last question, sir, with the Star of David.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Sean Owen, and I'm from here in Richland County, but I wanted to ask you two things. One is, what are your two top priorities that you would concentrate on as governor? And as a small business owner, would one of those things be cutting the state income tax?
That's number one, actually. Number one is state income tax. That's number one. I mean, it's nice we went from 6.2 to 6. It should be 0. State income tax should be 0 in every state across the country, number one. But, number 2, immigration. Number 3 would be energy. 4 would be women and children. 5 would be education. That is in the top 5, and then everything else. But again, it's all negotiation, but those are the 5 things I see desperately needed in our state. I've seen it. Like, I go back to the sanctuary sheriff. How the hell was this woman allowed to get this seat? And then the state did nothing about it when they knew that she was letting out rapists, pedophiles, and murderers. But tax policy is number one because inflation is so high, you can't afford groceries. Like, it's just so crazy, the amount of money. I love being home in South Carolina for a week. I get to see my children, but the grocery bill is insane. And then they want to go out to eat once a week. And I'm like, But they didn't like Waffle House as kids. They love it now. So Waffle House to teenagers is super cool. And for $1.89, you can get the best cup of coffee in town. Better than Starbucks, but it's got to be fresh. If it's been sitting there for a while, don't get it. Make them have them make you a fresh pot. But it's the best coffee $2 can buy. So thank you all. I want to say thank you. I want to say God bless you. God bless you. And the last thing I want to say before I close, if you want to take a photo, I'll stand over here and Cindy will do a photo line. But I wanted to, 5 years ago, I walked into a church for the first time in a really long time. And I didn't spontaneously combust. I was going through not my first, but my second divorce. I was thinking about running for Congress. And my life was just, a complete shit show. It was just a disaster. It was awful. I'd made some bad decisions. I was given a second chance. I walked into this church, and the preacher, Josh Surratt from Seacoast, was preaching on Jeremiah 6:16. And it was about standing at a crossroads in life and about having to look at the crossroads, look at the path, and choosing the right way forward. And I'm bawling my eyes out. I hadn't been in church in 20 years. I wasn't sure if I was Christian or not at that time of my life. And my son, he was like 12 at the time, sweet kid. He puts my arm around my waist. He looks up at me. He's like, Mommy, I love you. It's going to be okay. We are going to be okay. And in the last 5 years, I've been walking in my faith so much, so strong. And the more that I listen to God and his favor and understand he's our Father, our Savior, our friend, the more abundance he gives to us. And I have learned so much over the last couple of years as a member of Congress, through my faith, through my family, through their support. It's been a blessing that I never knew. And my ex-husband called me, this is right before I was announcing my first run for Congress in 2019. And he said, I had a dream about you last night. And he said, I think I finally figured you out. Because a lot of people are confused by me. I'm an enigma, hard to understand. I think I'm consistent. But he says, I think I finally figured you out. With the political thing, he says, you know what? It gives you purpose in life. It drives who you are. He said, you know what? You're actually good at it. And I was like, well, if you said that 5 years ago, we'd still be married. But that's neither here nor there. I started going to Bible study last summer for the first time in my life. Last summer, Senator Tim Scott had his prayer breakfast in D.C. And I was burdened that day. I had a really heavy burden that morning. And I just had this burden. He saw it. He could feel it. And I was on stage giving my speech at his prayer breakfast. And he came up on us. He said, don't leave the stage. I didn't leave the stage. He came up to the stage, put his hands on me, started praying over me. And that moment just really spiritually for me over the last, I'd say 6-9 months or so, and Sydney's seen it, Jane, they've all seen it. But what that has done to me, it was Tim Scott that got me into that church. It was Tim Scott that has guided me spiritually. And it was Tim Scott who prayed over me with his hands on me for the first time in my life. And I can't tell you how many times I've not asked for it, but it's been happening. And so I just can't, I want to say thank you for the favor. I know there are people in this room who've prayed for our country, who've prayed for our state, who've prayed for members of Congress and prayed for our elected officials. And I would ask you to continue to keep praying because our country and our state desperately need it right now. This is a fight between good and evil. We can all feel it. We can see it. And it's up to us, like that says in the Bible with the rope, when it's just one strand of a rope, you're never going to win. 2 strands, you're standing back to back. You can fight some of that evil. You might win, you might not. But when it's 3 of us standing together united and a rope that tight, we will always win. And so when we're tired of fighting, we're going to fight harder. When we need nourishment, we got to go to God. We got to go to the Lord and ask for his favor and ask for nourishment because our country and our state and our communities are counting on it. So thank you all. God bless you. It's great to be here in Columbia and Richland County GOP. I love you. Thank you.